Miss Williams doesn't belong at this table. The words cut across the mahogany conference room like a verdict. 8 board members in tailored suits stare at me. The black woman in a maid's uniform standing at the head of the table where Richard Aldridge usually sits. The CFO, Martin Preston, leans back in his leather chair. Mr. Aldridge is clearly not himself. We should postpone until he's recovered. I'm not sick, Richard says from his wheelchair beside me, his voice weak but clear. And Grace has something to say? You'll listen. I look at the spreadsheets I've spent 6 weeks understanding, at the numbers that don't match, at the pattern no one else has seen because they weren't looking from where I stand. Your company isn't failing, I say quietly. It's being stolen. Martin's face doesn't change, but his left hand, the one holding his pen, tightens just slightly. And I know I'm right. 6 weeks earlier, the Aldridge mansion overlooks San Francisco Bay like a glass monument to success. 40 rooms, 23 bathrooms, staff quarters that are nicer than any place I've ever lived. I stand in the entrance hall with my references, my uniform pressed, my game face on. The household manager, Miss Park, walks me through the estate. Mr. Aldridge requires assistance now. The stroke was severe. He's 64, built an empire, and now he can barely sign his own name. What kind of empire? I ask. Tech infrastructure. Aldridge Systems. If you're using the internet, you're probably using his company's backbone. She pauses outside a study. He's proud. This has been difficult. She opens the door. Richard Aldridge sits in a wheelchair by floor-to-ceiling windows, staring at the bay. His right side is slack. His face sags on one side. His hand rests useless in his lap. Mr. Aldridge? This is Grace Williams, your new daytime caregiver. He doesn't turn. Don't need a caregiver. Need a miracle. His words slur slightly, but the bitterness is crystal clear. I'm Grace, I say, moving into his sight line. And I don't do miracles. Just the job. He looks at me then. Really looks. His good eyes sharp, assessing, seeing more than people usually do. You always this direct? Always. Something almost like a smile crosses half his face. Good. I'm tired of pity. The first week, I learn his routine. Morning exercises, occupational therapy, trying to regain hand function. He swears through every repetition. Afternoon rest. Evening visitors from the company, updating him on decisions being made without him. They're vultures, he mutters after a visit from his executive team. Waiting for me to die so they can carve up what I built. Are they stealing from you? I ask, straightening his blankets. Not stealing. Just deciding. Making choices I wouldn't make. Selling off divisions. Restructuring. They say I'm too sick to understand the complexity. Do you understand it? His jaw clenches. I can't even write my own name anymore, Grace. How am I supposed to run a company? I think of Marcus. My brother. Gone 5 years now from a stroke the free clinic missed until it was too late. 38 years old, brilliant, and dead because he couldn't afford the right doctors at the right time. Understanding and writing are different things, I tell Richard. He looks at me with something between hope and despair. That night, I find myself thinking about his question. About being trapped in a body that won't obey. About having knowledge but no voice. About being dismissed because people decide you don't matter anymore. I know something about that. On day 9, I noticed the first thing. Richard's executive team visits. 5 men in expensive suits talking around him like he's furniture. The CFO, Martin Preston, presents a proposal to sell the company's European division. The numbers work, Martin says, showing spreadsheets to the others, not to Richard. We'll net $400 million, streamline operations, focus on core markets. Richard's good hand twitches. Let me see. Martin holds up a page briefly. As you can see, margins have dropped 18% over 3 quarters. The division is underperforming. How much debt? Richard struggles. Minimal. But opportunity cost is significant. We need to move quickly before market conditions change. They talk for 40 minutes. Richard tries to ask questions, but his words come slowly, get tangled. They wait with polite patience, then continue their conversation. After they leave, Richard slumps in his wheelchair. Defeated. I can't fight them, he whispers. I can't even think fast enough anymore. What was wrong with what they said? I ask. He looks surprised. You were listening? I'm always listening. The European division isn't underperforming. It's growing, just slower than they want. His words are clearer when he's not being rushed. Martin wants to sell it because it'll make the quarterly numbers look good. Short-term gain, long-term disaster. So stop him. How? I can barely speak. I can't attend board meetings. I can't review documents fast enough. They're making decisions that need my signature, and He gestures at himself with bitter frustration. I think about this. About power and voice. About who gets listened to and why. What if someone could review the documents for you? My lawyers do that. They say everything looks legitimate. What if someone who wasn't a lawyer looked? Someone who notices things. He studies me. You want to look at my company's financial records? I want to understand why they're in such a hurry. Richard is quiet for a long moment. Then, why do you care? I think of Marcus. Of doctors who dismissed his symptoms because he came from a free clinic. Who assumed he was exaggerating because people like us always do. Who didn't listen until it was too late. Because I've watched people get talked around before, I tell Richard. And it usually means someone's hiding something. He gives me access that night. Not to everything. That would require board approval. But to his personal files. His copies of proposals. His notes from before the stroke. I read after my shift ends. I read until midnight. I read until my eyes burn. And I start to see things. Numbers that almost match, but don't quite. Proposals that reference documents I can't find. Decisions being rushed through while Richard is recovering. On day 15, I find it. A proposal to sell the European division for $400 million. And buried in Richard's old files, a purchase offer from 3 months ago, before his stroke, for $680 million. The same division. The same buyer. Someone is trying to sell Richard's company to themselves at a $280 million discount. I show Richard the documents at breakfast. His good hand trembles as he holds them. His face, the half that still moves, goes white. Martin, he says. Martin is on the buyer's board. I couldn't remember. Why would your CFO sell your division cheap to his own company? Richard's jaw works. Because after my stroke, the board granted him temporary signing authority. For continuity. If he gets me to approve this sale while I'm impaired, he walks away with a massive profit and I lose 1/3 of my company's value. That's fraud. It's business. Gray area. By the time lawyers sort it out, the division is sold and Martin's resigned with a golden parachute. Richard looks at me with exhausted fury. And everyone will say I wasn't competent to stop it. Poor sick Richard lost his edge. Are you competent? The question stops him. I don't know anymore, he admits. I can't think as fast. I can't talk without struggling. Maybe they're right. Maybe I should just let it go. I've heard this before. Marcus said it 2 days before he died. Maybe I should just let it go. Like being sick means being wrong. Like struggle means incompetence. Like the value of your mind disappears when your body fails. Your thinking is fine, I tell Richard. You spotted the fraud in 30 seconds once you could see it clearly. You don't have a thinking problem. You have a time problem. They're moving too fast for you to process. Which makes me incompetent? No. Which makes them cheats? I set down my coffee. They're using your recovery time as cover. Rushing decisions before you can analyze them. That's not your weakness. That's their strategy. Richard stares at me. Who are you? I'm the person who notices things, I say. And I notice that every proposal they've brought you in the last 6 weeks has a 72-hour deadline. What? He thinks. Normal business is slower. Even urgent deals take weeks. So why the rush now? His good eye sharpens. Because they need to move before I recover enough to fight back. Exactly. We sit in silence while the morning light spills across his study. While the machinery of wealth and power continues around us, assuming we're not paying attention. What do I do? Richard asks finally. I can't even attend the board meeting. It's tomorrow. They're voting on the sale. Can you fire Martin? Not alone. Board has to approve executive terminations. Can you stop the sale? I can vote no. But my vote counts the same as theirs, and they have the majority. I think about this. About systems designed to concentrate power. About how the powerful protect each other. About how someone like me isn't supposed to be in this conversation at all. What if you had proof? I ask. Not just the old offer, but proof that Martin is personally benefiting from the sale. That would be a breach of fiduciary duty. Board would have to act. Then we find proof. Richard looks at me with something like wonder. You're serious. I'm always serious. I spend the next 18 hours in Richard's files. Miss Park brings me coffee at midnight. You should rest. Almost there. Grace. She sits beside me. I've worked for Mr. Aldridge for 12 years. I've seen people try to help him. But this? You're putting yourself in the middle of a corporate war. These men have lawyers, resources, power, and I have time to read what they think doesn't matter. She's quiet. Then, what are you looking for? Money trails. Martin's smart. He's hiding his connection to the buyer. But rich people always leave tracks. They can't help it. At 3 a.m., I find it. A subsidiary company, owned by a shell corporation, owned by a trust, owned by Martin Preston's wife. The buyer isn't a competitor. It's Martin's own investment group, disguised through 5 layers of corporate structure. He's not just selling Richard's division cheap. He's buying it for himself. I print everything. I organize it chronologically. I build a case that even lawyers can't ignore. When Richard wakes at 7, I have 20 pages of documentation waiting. He reads slowly, methodically. His good hand traces connections. His mind, clear and sharp despite what his body does, follows the thread. This is it, he breathes. This is enough. So call the board. Show them. They won't believe me. His voice cracks. Brace, you have to understand. I can barely get through a sentence without pausing. I slur words. I get tired. They look at me and see someone who's done. Someone whose time has passed. Then I'll show them. He stops himself. I'm the maid, I finish. I know. That's not what I meant. Yes, it is. And it's fine. Because that's exactly why I can do this. I meet his eyes. They dismiss you because you're sick. They'll dismiss me because of what I look like, what I do, where I stand in this house. Which means they won't see me coming. Richard's face does something complicated. I can't ask you to do this. You're not asking. I'm telling you I'm going to do it. I think of Marcus. Of the doctors who didn't listen. Of every time someone like me was told our observations didn't count. I'm done being quiet. The board meeting is at 2 p.m. I dress in my uniform deliberately. Let them see exactly who I am. Let them underestimate me completely. Ms. Part drives us to Aldridge Systems headquarters, a glass tower in downtown San Francisco that pierces the fog like a promise. Security waves us through to the executive floor. The conference room is all dark wood and leather. 8 board members seated around a table that costs more than I'll make in 5 years. Martin Preston at the head, Richard's temporary chair. Martin stands when we enter. Richard, I didn't realize you were planning to attend. My company, Richard says slowly. My vote. Of course. Grace, you can wait in the hallway. She stays, Richard says. Martin's smile tightens. This is a closed board meeting. Only members and essential executive staff. She's essential. The room temperature drops 5 degrees. Another board member, Catherine Liu, the general counsel, speaks up. Richard, we're here to finalize the European division sale. We've been over the numbers. It's the right move for the company's fiscal health. I want to review. Richard's words tangle. His frustration is visible. Martin leans forward with practiced sympathy. I know this is difficult. The stroke has affected your processing speed. But we have a limited window on this deal. The buyer won't wait indefinitely. Because the buyer, I say quietly, is you. The room goes silent. Martin's face arranges itself into polite confusion. I'm sorry. The buyer is a shell company that you control through your wife's trust. You're not selling the European division. You're buying it for yourself at $280 million below market value. That's absurd. Who are you again? I'm the person who read the documents. All of them. I place my folder on the table, including the ones you didn't think anyone would connect. Martin doesn't reach for the folder. Richard, your maid is making wild accusations based on what? Documents she's not qualified to interpret? This is exactly why we have professionals. Read them, Richard says. His voice is stronger now. Catherine picks up the folder, flips through pages. Her expression changes. Martin, she says slowly. Is this true? It's a misunderstanding of complex corporate structures. It's fraud, I say. He's using his position as CFO to sell company assets to himself at a discount, while Mr. Aldridge is recovering. He rushed the timeline specifically because he knew Richard couldn't analyze the documents fast enough to stop him. Another board member leans forward. Let me see that. The folder passes around the table. I watch faces change. Watch realization dawn. Watch the moment they understand what's been happening in their boardroom. Watch them understand that the maid was right. Martin stands abruptly. This is character assassination based on circumstantial. Sit down. Catherine says coldly. Brace, walk us through these documents. So I do. I show them the shell companies, the timeline of Martin's wife's trust, the original $680 million offer that Martin buried, the rush proposals that coincidentally all came while Richard was most impaired. I speak clearly, precisely. I don't apologize for being in this room. When I finish, Catherine looks at Martin. You have 60 seconds to explain this before I call the SEC. Martin's face is stone. Fine. Yes. I structured the purchase through private entities. That's not illegal. I saw an opportunity. You saw your boss have a stroke and decided to rob him. I say, you don't understand business. Companies make deals like this constantly. Richard was going to lose the European division anyway. Markets are changing. Competition is fierce. I offered a solution that benefited everyone. Except Richard, someone points out. Richard is sick. Martin's control finally cracks. He can't run this company anymore. Someone has to make hard decisions. Someone has to be realistic about his limitations. His limitations, I say quietly, are that he needs time to process information, not that he can't process it. You exploited the difference. You rushed decisions before he could think. You treated his recovery time as incompetence. And you're the maid who's suddenly a business expert? I'm the maid who can read, and count, and notice when numbers don't match. I look at him steadily. Turns out that's enough. The room is silent. Richard clears his throat. Motion to terminate Martin Preston. For cause. Seconded. Catherine says immediately. The vote is unanimous. Martin leaves the building escorted by security. His laptop, his files, his access, everything stripped in minutes. Richard sits in his wheelchair at the head of the conference table, in his rightful place, and the board suddenly remembers how to include him in conversation, how to wait for his words, how to listen. Funny how that works. The aftermath takes weeks. Lawyers, investigations, criminal charges filed against Martin for breach of fiduciary duty and fraud. The European division doesn't sell. Instead, Richard installs new management, and it thrives. Grew 12% this quarter, Richard tells me, reading the report in his study. His speech is better now. Therapy helping. Time helping. People actually listening helping most of all. Told you it wasn't failing. You told me a lot of things. He sets down the report. The board wants to offer you a position. As what? Corporate maid. He almost laughs. As my chief of staff. You'd work directly with me. Review proposals. Analyze deals. Be my eyes on the company while I continue recovering. I think about this. About moving from uniform to corner office. About the version of me who would have been too intimidated to even imagine it. I'm not qualified, I say. You spotted a $280 million fraud that 8 board members missed. You're overqualified. I didn't go to business school. Neither did I. I went to state college on financial aid and learned by doing. Richard looks at me seriously. Grace, you have something no degree can teach. You notice things. You connect patterns. You don't assume authority equals truth. That's rare. It's called growing up poor, I say. You learn not to trust people who sound confident. Then we need more people who grew up poor in corporate boardrooms. I think of Marcus. Of all the things he could have done if the system hadn't failed him. Of all the voices like his that never get heard because they're dismissed before they speak. Okay, I say. But I'm keeping my apartment. Wouldn't dream of asking otherwise. I start the next week. The executive team is polite, professional, and deeply uncomfortable with a black woman in her 40s with no college degree sitting in on strategy meetings. I notice this. I ignore it. I do my job. I review contracts. I ask questions people think are too simple until those questions reveal complexity everyone missed. I translate Richard's insights into language that boards understand. I become the bridge between his mind and the system that tried to discard him. You're good at this, Catherine tells me after a meeting. Unsettling, but good. Unsettling how? You make us second-guess ourselves. Make us explain our assumptions. It's uncomfortable. Good, I say. Comfortable is how Martin almost robbed this company blind. She smiles. Fair point. 6 months in, Richard speaks at a tech conference. He's using a cane now, not a wheelchair. His words still slurs slightly when he's tired, but mostly he's clear. Strong. Himself again. When I had my stroke, he tells the audience, everyone assumed I was done, including me. But someone in my household refused to accept that. She looked past my limitations and saw what I could still do. She reminded me that thinking and speaking are different things. That needing time doesn't mean lacking ability. He pauses. That person was my maid, Grace Williams, who is now my chief of staff, who saved my company because she noticed things everyone else missed, who had the courage to speak up in a room where she didn't belong. The audience applauds. I sit in the back, uncomfortable with attention. Richard continues. We talk about diversity like it's charity, like we're doing people a favor by including them. But Grace didn't save my company because I was generous. She saved it because her perspective, as a Black woman, as a caregiver, as someone the system usually ignores, let her see what people like me miss. Inclusion isn't charity. It's survival. Because the next crisis you face, the solution might come from the person you're not listening to right now. Later, people approach me, ask how I did it. What my secret was. No secret, I tell them. I just decided my observations counted, even when everything around me said they didn't. A year after the board meeting, I visit Marcus's grave. I'd bring flowers, sit in the grass, talk to the sky. I couldn't save you, I say. Couldn't make them listen when it mattered. But I learned something from losing you. I learned that being dismissed doesn't mean being wrong. That quiet doesn't mean ignorant. That the system counting you out doesn't determine your worth. Wind moves through the cemetery trees. I'm using what you taught me. I'm being the voice that pushes back, that questions, that refuses to stay quiet just because staying quiet is easier. A family passes, visiting nearby graves. A child asks questions. The mother answers patiently, treating each question like it matters. That's what I'm learning. To treat every question like it matters. Even from people the world says don't count. Richard and I have dinner now. Not employer and employee. Friends. I'm thinking of stepping down, he says one evening. From CEO. Not from the board. I'm not that generous. But someone younger should run operations. Because of the stroke? Because I'm 65 and rich and tired. He grins. And because I want to focus on something else. I'm starting a foundation. For corporate governance reform. Specifically, protecting CEOs who become disabled from being exploited during recovery. And creating pathways for people like you. People with real-world experience, but no traditional credentials, to enter executive positions. People like me being Black women from working-class backgrounds. People like you being brilliant observers who notice what MBAs miss. The Black woman from working-class backgrounds part is relevant because those experiences create perspective that matters. But yeah, people like you. I think about this. About Marcus. About all the brilliant people who never get access to rooms where decisions are made. Count me in, I say. If this story touched you, if you've ever been the only one in the room, the one people didn't expect, the one they dismissed until you proved them wrong, I need you to hear this. Your observations count. Your questions matter. Your perspective, shaped by everything the world calls a disadvantage, is exactly what powerful spaces need. Don't wait for permission to speak up. Don't wait for credentials to trust yourself. Don't wait for authority to validate what you already know. The maids of the world, the caregivers, the workers, the ones who clean up messes and see what gets left behind. We notice things. We connect patterns. We understand the difference between what people say and what they do. That knowledge has power. Use it. Speak up in the rooms where you don't belong. Ask the questions people think are too simple. Trust yourself when everyone says you're wrong. Because sometimes, more often than the powerful want to admit, the person who saves everything is the one they weren't listening to. Be that person. I keep my uniform in my office closet. Not because I need it. Because I don't want to forget where I came from. What I saw. Who I was when I decided that belonging wasn't something people gave me. It was something I claimed. The day I walked into that boardroom, I wasn't supposed to speak. I was supposed to wait in the hallway like Martin said. Stay in my place. Accept that important conversations happen without people like me. But I'd stayed silent before. When Marcus was sick. When doctors dismissed us. When the system decided our questions didn't matter. And silence cost him everything. So I decided, right then, in that moment, that I was done accepting other people's definitions of where I belong. I belonged at that table because I had something to say that needed hearing. That's the only credential that matters. Richard retires 6 months later. The new CEO is a woman, 42, brilliant, Latina, promoted from VP of operations. Someone who understands that seeing things from outside the usual perspective matters. The foundation launches. We create fellowship programs, mentorship tracks, pathways for non-traditional candidates to enter corporate leadership. It's not enough. It's never enough. The system is too big, too entrenched, too invested in keeping power where it's always been. But it's something. And something is where everything starts. On the 2-year anniversary of that board meeting, Richard calls me to his study. I have something for you. He hands me an envelope. Inside, shares of Aldridge Systems. Enough to make me wealthy. Truly, generationally wealthy. Richard, I can't. You saved this company. This is your piece of it. Not charity. Ownership. You earned it. I hold the papers with shaking hands. Think about Marcus. About the apartment we shared. About choosing between groceries and medicine. About how different his life might have been with resources. With access. With people listening. I'm giving half to the foundation. I say. For people like Marcus. Who need advocates. I'd expect nothing less. Richard smiles. Grace? Thank you. For seeing me when everyone else saw limitations. For refusing to be quiet. For reminding me that being heard isn't about speaking perfectly. It's about whether people choose to listen. We sit together while afternoon light fills the study. 2 people the world tried to count out, who refused to stay discounted. They said I didn't belong at that table. I say finally. They were wrong. No. I meet his eyes. They were right. I didn't belong at their table. So I made it mine. That's the real story. Not that I was invited in, but that I decided invitation wasn't required. That belonging isn't granted by gatekeepers. It's claimed by people brave enough to walk through doors they're told are locked. The doors are never locked. They're just guarded by people who benefit from you believing they are. Walk through anyway. Your voice matters. Your observations count. Your perspective changes everything. Trust that, even when no one else does. Especially then.